A Day and a Life, Chapter 6. When Colin comes back from the robing room, he feels conspicuous in his layman's garb. Not so different, after all, from the tunics the novices are wearing, but the tonsures, the scapulars, the rosaries, the uniform black, it all sets them apart. He longs to be admitted to this exclusive communion with its aura of dedication and holiness. It's strange and lonely, the place of a postulant. He has expressed his desire to leave the world of ordinary folk going about their normal occupations, to be part of this, so that severance has occurred in his will, in his expressed intent, but he is not yet one of them. And all the others are careful to call each other Brother Cassian, Brother Boniface, Brother Placidus, Brother Felix, Brother Robert, where he has to be just Colin. The day of his clothing can't come soon enough. He gathers from the conversation as he enters the teaching circle and takes his place that Father Theodore has been allocating duties for the week ahead. Colin indicates the score that he replaced on the shelf as he came in and relays the message from Father James about singing with Father Gilbert in the afternoon, and Father Theodore nods and gives his permission. Now you're back then, Colin. Let's begin our lesson. I wonder, can anyone tell me, literally I mean, what is monasticism? Where does the word come from? What is its origin? What language? Uncertain silence greets these questions, but they all know they can rely on Brother Felix. It's Greek, isn't it, Father? I'm thinking of Aristophanes' play, The Birds. It has monopods in it, people who have only one foot, and monotonous when someone has no variety in their voice but speaks all on one note. So, something to do with the practice of, well, being one, I suppose? Colin looks at him in astonishment. How does he know all this stuff? He looks at the novice master and sees the lively interest in his eyes, the response to something intelligent being said for once. Colin seriously doubts that anything he could possibly say would spark that same glow of interest. Now he thinks about it, he remembers Brother saying something similar only a few days ago, that even if he scraped the bottom of his mind so thoroughly he began to chisel into the actual wood, he'd never dredge up any observation as intelligent as the things Brother Felix comes up with. That's entirely correct, says the novice master. Monasticism began in the desert, and the word expresses something of that. The practice of being alone, solitary, set apart. The Greek is monas, as I'm sure you all know. It means unit, and is in turn derived from monos, meaning alone. If you put those together and think about it, you could argue that it is also about the practice of becoming one, of drawing apart to create new unity, community, in fact, being one with each other. Now, from the same root grows the word monad, also Greek. It comes from Pythagorean thinking, and it was a term for the first being, the source for all beings, the origin of all being. The monad is divine. Before the monad there was nothing, and if we trace back through the whole tree of life to the primal root, the original being, that's the monad. In our vocabulary, what would that be? God, says Brother Robert, but thinks he's probably wrong when Brother Felix says, Christ? Say more, Brother Felix. I'm thinking about the Gospel of John, how in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and without him was not anything made that was made. And that is Christ in his cosmic perspective. Thank you, says the novice master. Yes. Can you, all of you, see then that the word monasticism has a whole lot more inside it than simply meaning alone? It may have meant that to express the drawing apart into solitude of the desert fathers who all lived as hermits in caves, but it also bears inside it an association with the divine, with the Logos, the origin of all life, and with being one. Who remembers where Christ prays that we may be as one, completely one, as he and the Father are one? This time, Brother Cassian is hell-bent on preventing Felix from having all the glory. John 17, he says quickly. The big long prayer on the night before his death, after the Last Supper. Yes, says Father Theodore, yes. And what does Christ say and do at the Last Supper? Colin, do you know? He speaks gently and his eyes are kind, and from this Colin discerns the answer must be something easy, but he's so nervous about being asked anything that for a moment he can't think at all. He tries to shut out the look of faint incredulity on Brother Felix's face. It's how Brother Said put it last week, he says at last. I think I must be such an idiot. Father Theodore frowns. He said you were an idiot? No, he said he was. The novice master looks at him thoughtfully. Well, you aren't, and nor is he. If I remind you that the Last Supper was the occasion of the institution of the Eucharist, does that jog your memory? Oh, says Colin, right. He broke the bread and poured out the wine, and he said, do this to remember me. Exactly so. Let me try and put these things together for you. We have the monad, the divine original being from whom all creation proceeds. In the Gospel of John, we have Christ the Logos, the living word proceeding from God, and without him was nothing made that is made, all things came into being through him. So John is identifying Christ as the monad. Greek thought systems at work. It's why we call him the only Son of God. If we look at the French, that helps us. Fils unique, the only Son. Do you see? This idea of singleness, of the only being quite like this, associated with Christ. And then still in John's Gospel, and that's important, we have Christ's prayer that we may all be one as Christ and the Father are one. Why it's important that this is in John's Gospel is because of the prologue identifying Christ with the monad. This is a huge idea John is importing. The implication is that by our love, our agape love for one another in community, we will be taken up into participation of the divine. So then, look at Christ's words at the institution of the Eucharist, which we also call communion, being made one. He breaks the bread, he pours out the wine. This is my body, he says. This is my blood. So now we have an image of something scattered and torn, fragmented, spilt, dismembered. Remember what I taught you about the Didache, the earliest catechism? How it says concerning the broken bread, as this broken bread was scattered over the hills, and then when gathered became one mass, so may thy church be gathered from the ends of the earth unto thy kingdom. Look at it, brothers. Think about it. See what's going on. Christ says, do this to remember me, to make me one again. It's about unity and brokenness, about the origins of life held together in unity, and then the scattering and fragmentation caused by violence and sin, then the healing, the shalom of unity rediscovered in love, in our life together, in the monastic way. God was in Christ, quotes Felix in soft and reverent tones, reconciling all things to himself. That's, I can't remember if that's in Corinthians or Colossians, Father. Thank God there's something you can't remember, thinks Colin. Because it's both, says the novice master. The 5th chapter of 2 Corinthians and the beginning of Colossians. And yes, that's the point. The whole purpose of the monastic life is to express the divine principle at the heart of creation. Unity with one another and with God. Reconciliation. Single-heartedness. Undivided by particular friendships or carnal loves. Is that... Am I... Do you understand? There is a sudden plea in his eyes. These things that set his soul on fire, he so wants to communicate them The circle of young men looks back at him, and even though it is small, it includes those who understand him perfectly and love the theological and philosophical integrity of it. Those who glimpse it and then lose sight of what he's teaching them. And those who haven't a clue what he means, but would never dream of saying so, because they love him. And he'd be so disappointed. Augustine, says Brother Felix, the body of Christ. I am. Exactly. Father Theodore always speaks quietly, but Colin notices he can pack some passion into what he says sometimes, even so. Yes. Exactly. In the impressed silence, Brother Cassian clears his throat. So, Father, is there anything we have to do about all this? I mean, does it have a practical application? Or is it just part of the workings of faith and divine mystery? Oh, it's practical. The novice master nods enthusiastically. It's not meant to be all above our heads, just a scholarly exercise. Nor is it all about being clever and being right. That's not what Jesus was interested in. It's for the healing of our souls and the creation of joy, of peace. To become one requires a lifetime's practice and effort. We try, we stumble, we fail, we get it wrong. We come back and try again, we understand, we forgive, we help each other up. It requires of us the exercise of patience and kindness, of self-control and humility, gentleness, and it asks faithfulness of us. We won't get there unless we are faithful, simply because Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is the kingdom of Christ. Though I've heard Abbot John say in a homily, it was a new thought to me, and I think he's quite right, that we just have to turn the key, open the door. He connected up the words of Christ from the book of Revelation, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock," with the words of the thief on the cross. Jesus, remember me when I come into your kingdom. He said that in the same way as we remember Christ in our communion, so Christ remembers us in the coming of his kingdom. We are healed. We are made one with each other. We regain our integrity as his kingdom comes on earth. But Father John said that when he asked himself, where does Christ come into his kingdom, he realised that it happens wherever and whenever we say he can. He stands at the door and knocks. We just have to open it. So it's true both that this process takes a lifetime and that it's the gift of a moment. And maybe after all, a lifetime is made up of a sequence of moments giving us the chance to say, yes, come on in. And then the thing that every time reminds Colin why he loves Father Theodore, suddenly uncertainty comes into the novice master's face. He falters. He looks anxiously round the group. He says humbly, I'm sorry. I think I've gone off onto a pet hobby horse of my own. I've been talking too much, haven't I? I expect you have much better ideas than mine. And now it's time we were packing away for the office. Oh, remember, Brother Cassian, Brother Boniface, Colin, Father Gilbert wants to see you in the choir afternoon. But Colin, I need you to come up and see me first, just for our routine conversation. Thank you, brothers. I'm sorry I went on so long. Colin, reflecting on this as the novices go along the upper corridor and down the day stairs to the cloister together, thinks how curious it is that while he feels so much in awe of his novice master, there's something about the man that makes him want to give him a hug sometimes, just to reassure him. And tomorrow we'll be having chapter 7 from A Day and a Life. God bless you. Go well.